As you know, the Foundation for Economic Growth and Welfare, recently set up, focuses on policy-oriented research and research-based policy advice. We like to give advice and suggestions based on solid, high-quality research. It is in this context that we have started the webinar series. And in this webinar series, we get the best minds from across the world to come and speak to us on contemporary issues. It is that very thing in mind that we have invited Dr. Foida to come and speak to us. The session today is being chaired by Dr. Ratan Chand, who's the founding director of the foundation. And we all know that Dr. Ratan Chand is from the Indian Statistical Service. He is a consultant with the World Bank even now and WHO, and he's also the national monitor for the government of India. With this, I hand over the session to Dr. Ratan to conduct the webinar.
What I was saying, Professor Ram has been an esteemed colleague, and I have known him for the last 10 to 15 years. So we have been, he was the director and senior professor at the International Institute of Population Sciences. So Dr. Ram completed his master in statistics from Banaras Hindu University, then PhD in demography from the Mumbai University. He has also been a Rockefeller Foundation scholar at the Ohio State University. He is an independent researcher and a consultant on population issues. He has served as chairperson member in many national and international committees constituted by the central or state government and the international development agencies. Professor Ram steered several rounds of nationwide health surveys, like this district level household survey, national family health surveys, and the information from these surveys has been very, very useful to the academicians, to the researchers, and also to the civil society and the public. He has guided several students in their master's, MPhil, and PhD dissertations and published over 150 papers in national and international journals. His work mainly focuses on indirect estimates of fertility and mortality, maternal mortality, sex-selective abortions, sexual and reproductive health, and civil registration system in India. So today his topic is works doesn't stop at hum do hamare do. Fertility reversal is difficult to achieve. So I request Professor Ram to kindly take over and give his presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ratan Chand, for nice introductions. Maybe now I'll switch off the video and share my presentation. And let me know when you can see my screen. I hope you all can see this presentation. So my presentation is yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Your presentation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now, thank you. Good evening to all of you. And I at outset must thank EGROW and Dr. Ratan Chand for giving me an opportunity to share my views to all those who have joined this webinar. I also thank all those who have given their time and joined this. Hopefully, I will get the best of them so that my knowledge and my views actually get improved, and I may improve my research paper and view which will help policymakers and population manager. The present webinar, in fact, was a discussion initiated immediately after China declared its child policy. In that month, Dr. Ratan Chand contacted me and he just said, what is the implication of this? Of course, he did not elaborate, Implication for whom? For India or for China or for the world as large? Because we, China and India, have a large population. Anything happens in our country, it happens or seen at the global level. So with that discussion, of course, Dr. Ratan Chand then says, can you talk on this topic and throw some light to our audience? I agreed for that and prepared some of my views, which will be expressed in next 30-40 minutes. I'll try my level best within that time. And most of the statistics we present or I speak, they are from my continuing work. And one paper which has been published is Demographic Transition in India, Insights into Population Growth, Composition, and its Driver for India. So, and then second paper I'm working on, Shifting of births to older ages in India. There has been some evidence that more and more older women are giving birth compared to the younger age groups of women. So that's another paper I'm working on. So the whole presentation would be actually coming from these two papers. Now my presentation is in two parts. One is fertility transition below replacement, how the fertility behaves once it reaches 2.1 total fertility rate, that is TFR. Second, of course, as Dr. Ratan Chand has requested, is the population scenario under different options for India and China. So these are the two parts, and I would now like to go through my presentation. I think it is worth recalling this write-up, not very old. It's published paper in 2012, and maybe some of you may not know, but we have a Demni Paul, most known, very important demographer, known to all demography and demographer. Lot of work he has done. He was from Europe. So this is what actually the author says, that we need to ask question why large part of the European civilization that produced Demni Paul, a gentleman and scholar in the finest sense of both words, have decided through aggregate decision of women and men to commit gradual demographic suicide. Now at this stage, 8 years later I'm talking about, it's not European men and women, large number of Asian men and women have also probably come into this sentence, committing demographic suicide. Now, the view may be different. Is it demographic suicide or it is something else? But that's what I think we go through and understand. Is it the demographic suicide or something else? Now, this is I thought it's important to understand the very basic principle of demography. And whatever statement is given in this slide, all are mathematically proven, not a statement or evidence from field. It's a mathematical equation in demography. When we say that total fertility is more than 2, it generally in long term leads to population explosion. That is actually the high growth rate. But that would depend on mortality levels in the population. We all could recall what has happened in India before 1941. We had total fertility rate of more than 6 children per woman. At the same time, we had also growth rate, sometimes negative during 11 and 21, or it was very low. That means mortality plays very important role. In fact, I would say we must appreciate our men and women who produce that children so that India can survive that high mortality regime to today's status. So we must say that. But what I'm saying that just TFR is 2 or 3 doesn't mean automatically it leads to population explosion. It was a 1961 census that indicated, in fact, that yes, now we are in the state of population explosion when population growth was almost close to 2%. And that 2% continued for a very long time in India until I think 2001. Second principle, which we always talk, TFR of 2.1, that is the replacement fertility we call. But I must remind that replacement fertility is for those countries where mortality is very low. That is the most developed country, not for India, not for many of the states in India. I say that we calculated this replacement and India is almost below replacement at TFR of 2.2 in 2018 because mortality is high, child mortality is very high. So we are below replacement in fact. On the other hand, Rajasthan, with total fertility rate of 2.5, is also replacement fertility or below replacement because their child mortality is very high. Similarly, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, they are very close to replacement fertility, though the fertility may be close to 3. So we must remember that the TFR of 2.1 is not just a replacement. It is for low mortality country is the replacement, not for all the country. So we must remember that actually. TFR of 1, of course, we all have Chinese debate, one child policy, and there are research papers with a Chinese government actually repent or now at this stage retrospectively see that they had a wrong decision. So they have experienced what happened when TFR is one child policy we adopt. Though the TFR of China was not one at any time. It's a more of hypothetical. Last is the no child. If any country has no child, it's very extreme hypothetical conditions. But what happens is the population would collapse in one generation. So almost like, it's not just a country, any community, any state, any block, any district in India, if they go through that, they are no more on the planet. So that's the whole demographic principle. And in this context, we are looking at, and I would say TFR of 2 is the best. Every country would try to be around that, not exact 2.1 or so, but around that, every country is trying to be. And let us see what happens then. This is the general perception of the demographer. I'm not sure about economists or other discipline people that now at this time, the population growth problem has almost been resolved and any population policy agenda is out of fashion. It's no more relevant to have a population policy and so on. Researchers argue that only 16% of the global population. Now, all you can realize this 16%, I think, mostly comes from Africa. Most of these countries are from Africa, and long-term population projection of United Nations says that almost 40% share of the global population will be from Africa by 2100. So that's the focus probably is still relevant. Otherwise, it is demographer believe it is not relevant. More than half the demographer, mostly demographer, would not like to that government to intervene in the fertility regulation unless fertility is below 1.4, or I would say if the mortality is high, below 1.6 or so. 1.4 is when mortality is very, very low. Like Japan, you have under 5 mortality, only 2 per 1,000 live births. That means every child survives to age 5. But in India, it is not so. So this could be modified that below 1.6 in India or Indian state is the point of concern. We need to be concerned about that. And also we need to intervene if fertility is too high, that is above 3. None of the Indian states at this stage, except some small far more. Now, of course, most of the developing country thinks that their fertility is high, but most of what is important is the European country, almost 2/3, they believe that their fertility is too low, and almost 75% think that they have a policy, they must have a policy to boost fertility. This is what happened during 1986 to 2015. You can see that 19 government to 55 government, they have a policy, or they would like to have a policy to boost their fertility or boost the birth rate in their country. So however, literature suggests most of these countries have set of goal in terms of, have no set of goal in terms of TFR. I mean, this country have a policy, but they don't set that I want to reach to 2, I want to reach 1.8 or so. Japan, in the parliament paper, they have 1.8 mentioned somewhere that we need to reach to 1.8. They have used, these all European countries, they have a huge policy, family policy inputs to boost the fertility, but they don't say that. They want to support and see, create an environment, then the men and women can have children. Now, part 1, I would like to go through, and you can see, this is the India demographic transition experiences. Most of you probably have seen this, and you will see that this part here, around early 20th century, that's the point I was talking about, that we are around replacement fertility, but fertility and mortality both are very high, and growth is not a problem at this stage. But once the mortality starts declining, you have the concern, because fertility takes some time to get, and this is the growth in between, which explain or create a concern among the citizens that yes, now we are in the population explosion stage and we need to do something. And that's what has happened in this country, that 61 census played a great role to change the mindset. And by 66, I think Government of India had target oriented family planning program. That's right or wrong, that's a different issue. But yes, 1966 around, we had a policy which started giving target to the state government and so on. So the whole demographic transition, now we are around 21, but of course data we have is for 2018 from sample registration system, which gives us total fertility rate of 2.2. So I would say that we are very almost last stage of demographic transition, and enter the replacement fertility and transition thereafter. What you have after 20 is the UN projections. We will come back to that later. Now compare the India and China. You can see here what has happened. You have very smooth total fertility rate for India, estimated most of this. And Chinese have some ups and downs, and around 79 or 80 you can have one child policy declaration, around 80. And there has been a huge fertility decline thereafter, but fertility has never gone below 1.6 or 1.5. Different estimates. This is the UN estimate. Some other estimate may say 1.5. But since there is no very reliable statistics for China, the fertility estimate we know about is not below 1.5. This high point here, what you see, is because of what I believe is the dragon year. 1988 was the dragon year, where Chinese believe that having a child is very good, very talented child, and so on. Yes. Yes. Yes, sir. No, I can't hear you.
Requesting everybody to please keep your mics on silence, please.
Yeah. So everybody should unmute. so that there is no disturbance.
Requesting, please. Yeah,
Yeah,
Professor, please continue.
Okay, thank you. Now, this is the history, of China and India, and then I just see what happened later on. Now, this is the one theme of that rising the fertility is very difficult. You can see. This is the framework postulates of second demographic transitions. All those who know demography, we know that left side, most of these are proximate determinants. That is, age at marriage has an important thing. Postponement of having a first child, and then mean age of parenthood, contraception use, and so on. But they are all governed by the societal context, which is the right side. And those who believe the second demographic transition, that is a transition below replacement, they think that this is happening because of rising symmetry in the sex role, that is the gender equality catching up, greater women economic autonomy and individual autonomy, which is also governed by grassroots democracy. Grassroots democracy means I have freedom to do which I wish that it is good for me. Not the household, not the family, not the government has a right to say. I have a grassroots democracy, I think that way. But the red part, which is the ABC, I think the key to realize that why fertility has gone too low in this, this country, which will come back to this support. And this is basically because of the autonomy of the women, cost of child rearing, housing costs, and intensive parents. And there is incompatibility between job and childbearing. So first, let us look at some of the Asian countries. You have China, Iran, Korea, Thailand, and Japan. You can see the history of Japan here. I must say that the Korea is most outlier country, where the total fertility rate is below 1 now. It has been, you can see around 2005, it is 1. There has been some intervention and then fertility has gone up. It was, but now it has gone down below 1 for South Korea. Iran, I have, yes? Please unmute everybody request. Sorry, mute. Iran I have given here purposefully because, to see the reversal in the Iran. So some people may argue, no, you see, Iran can do, why other country can't do? Most of the country, you see, and we will discuss this policy intervention of Japan, angel child policy. There has been a great policy, but they have not been very successful. Though they raised the fertility to 1.42 from 1.26 minimum. And I believe many researchers have argued that these policies are not in frame of gender equality. They are actually combining household. So the women can leave the job and take care of children, they get some benefit. So, and that's not along with this gender equality. Iran actually we can't do. I think it is the violation of most reproductive rights of the women, because when they realize that below replacement fertility is not good for the country, most of the family planning programs were abolished, contraceptions were withdrawn from the market, and there was nothing available in the market in Iran for the women. So those who want, and that, the rights of women, reproductive rights of the people, that has been violated. But yes, demographic target, probably they have achieved, our goal has been achieved of the replacement fertility. But otherwise, I think most of the other countries which have the policy, they did not actually succeed much. I mean, as I said in the beginning, objective is to come closer to two-child policy, but it has been very difficult because as Japan has a very strong child care support, daycare centers, social security, keep your job. Now they have policy that men can keep their job, but there are some conditions. And in Japan, I think there are literature which suggests that all those who have a part-time job, large proportion of women have part-time job, so they can sacrifice their job for child bearing and so on. So that's why I feel, and researchers have given that literature suggests that yes, because of probably this issue, they are not actually very successful. China also has family policy, but after declaring three-child policy, they haven't come out strongly what is the supporting system to achieve that. So let us see what happens when they come out of the family policy in support of three-child policy in China. Now, this is the European country, except France. I think all four are Nordic country. And you can think, see, there are, I would like to say I'm not concerned about up and down, because there are technical discussions on this up and down, but I'm more concerned when the fertility is going up, there is a policy intervention before that, and how far it has been successful. That is my main concern. Otherwise, demographers believe, many demographers, there are research that the total fertility rate is not very good measure because it is affected by tempo of fertility. That is, the change in the mean age of childbearing affects the labor, and therefore the total fertility rate, that is the period fertility, is not good. You should use completed fertility rate or cohort fertility rate. That may be better, but that has more disadvantage in my view than the TFR. So my concern is the policy intervention. You see, after 2000, around 2000, there has been policy interventions in all these countries when they reach to this low fertility, and then they have been moving upwards, and then again after 10 years you have downwards and so on. Now Sweden, of course, here you can see it reached to replacement fertility somewhere in 90s, but then again it almost collapsed within 10 years. Within 10 years, fertility became one of the lowest in this Nordic country. And therefore, Sweden at present and most other Nordic countries, they have a very strong, as per the literature, very strong family policy, which addresses only to gender equality. And therefore, they are very successful. That means it is the individual policy, not the household policy or family policy. They have a policy that applies as strongly as to the women and men also. So, and therefore, researchers suggest that that kind of policy probably has more support from the men and women, and probably relatively more successful than any other European country. And literature, recent literature suggests that France, Belgium, and even South Korea is actually trying to adopt the Nordic country policy, which is more oriented to gender equality, and then the family as a whole, a policy for that. And therefore, we can probably become more successful than that. We'll come next to see. This is the European population, some of the European population, and similar things is happening. That beginning of 21st century, we have policy intervention. There is a slight up and then again down and so on. So we can see here what has happened from lowest total fertility rate and the year where we have gone. So that's the real problem. That Sweden, as I said, once it collapsed to 1.6 in 10 years from 90, they have maintained that when lowest was 1.6 and they have reached to 1.8 around. So that's the policy I think could help boosting the birth rate or total fertility rate. Some of them have been very successful in this. Probably you can see Denmark, Then, of course, Sweden, France, even Norway and Germany, they have been successful in this, trying to maintain, at least they are sustaining that total fertility rate. And I'm emphasizing that 1.6, 1.7 or 1.8 because you can see the next slide. This is India. You see the 8 Indian states. If you forget Odisha, which has entered very recently, around 2012 or 13, in the below replacement, all other states, total fertility rate is almost the same or below European population, below Nordic population. It's very clear that what has happened to these states. And if you compare to European population, their age at marriage is very low, female education is very low, female labor participation rate is very low. So you can't say that decision-making power and economic dependence or independence is much better than European population. These are questions one need to answer. What has happened to this? Whether these population, they are adopting these children only to come out of the poverty or something else? What is the reason that and child mortality is very high in most of these states. Some of these states are very high. Of course, Kerala is very low. So we will see that determinants why these states have come to this stage. One need to understand in context of sub-replacement fertility transition. And compared to European or Nordic country, you can see that fertility is very low, which is my concern. I think everybody's concern it should be that this should not happen. Of course, this is what I was saying, shifting to old ages birth. You can see that what has happened in this country, South Korea, 74% of the total TFR comes from above age 30. South Korea has age at marriage, female age at marriage above 30. So you see Japan 60%, Malaysia 56%, all European countries close to 60 or above 60%. That means childbearing is taking place very late. The age at parenthood is actually increasing or shifting to older ages, and that need also be a concern. Because even if you want to take two children, there is no scope. Biologically, above age 30 or 35, there is no scope to have a child, even if they want. So that need to be concerned. And I have shown this slide. More concern is India. You see India, 2011, we had 22% of the total fertility rate coming from above age 30. 2018, it is 35%. So I think that is the concern. I'm not saying that no, I think they should have child at younger ages, but it has a burden on the medical or healthcare. More complications, more complex actually hospitals are required to take care of these women and children. That I think should be taken care. In India, you can see that, in 2011, only 4.6 million births have taken place above age 30. That is 22%. But by 2018, more than 7 million births took place to the older women. That is above age 30, which we say that high risk age group. That is maternal mortality is high, child mortality is also high, and so on. So that need to be concerned from healthcare point of view, that if women are shifting at older ages, which may happen because they spend more time in the school, college, university, they would marry late because that no government can control that when you should marry. So they marry late, so they will have a child later on and so on. So that need to be seen from that perspective. Now, this is what I was saying. You can see the education. Kerala, 92% of the women almost, they have high school or above. 15 to 24 years of women, 92%. So they are at least everyone is high school or above. This is the NFHS 4 data. But you see other West Bengal, you see the Odisha, huge variation, but they are below replacement. West Bengal has 1 point lowest fertility, 1.5. You see the marriage Kerala has only 7%, below age 18, 15-24 women marrying below age 18, only 7%. You see West Bengal, Punjab also is low, Tamil Nadu also low, but you see West Bengal, 42%, very high, Andhra 33%. Look at child mortality variation. Kerala has only 10, and you have see West Bengal is 26. In fact, Odisha 44. See, the child mortality is too high, and they are below replacement. So we need to be concerned why this is happening and so on. See, compared to other country, we have India. I'm just giving India 39. Latest figure is 39 under 5 mortality. 39 children die out of 1,000 born. You look at other country. You have Japan. You can't compare Japan. You have a Thailand. You see 9. So that is the concern. I think there is a huge variation in the background or contextual variable, but we are much below replacement, and we have moved much below the European country. So that's the concern I think we all need to have. Now, the second part of my work relate to 3-child and some options. This is the policy everybody knows, so I'm not spending time on this. Then you have this alternative projection. United Nations in 2019 has, so you can see the fertility 3 options, high, low, medium projections, and accordingly the population, if you don't reduce, that is the high variant, then you have 2.2 billion population by 2100, and medium, which I think is the best projections, you have 1.45 decline. It reaches to 1.6 and then decline to 1.4. China, on the other hand, decline is much, much faster than India. This everybody talks about. India is about to overtake China in terms of population in another 6-7 years. So that everybody knows. Now, this is what I did, because Dr. Ratan Chand had asked 3-child. With the experience of what I presented earlier, I believe that just China cannot reach to 3.5 or 3 children TFR in just few years or immediate. It's a very difficult. What was China 40 years back is not today's China. Today China much more educated, much more rich, and most of the women working, they have comparatively higher decision making and so on. And we also know 2014 in political Communist Party, they had declared 2-child, implemented in early 2016, but its impact cannot be seen on total fertility rate. And therefore, as per my calculation and trend in many of the country, if you have Nordic type of policy, probably, I'm not sure it will be, but probably TFR can reach to 3 by 2041. And I'm, as per the experience of Indian states, you have 1.5 TFR for India by 2037. Then what will happen, you can see the population size. Is still China's population you have is decline, and India's population declines to 1.08, which is very similar or little lower than UN population, but you have a very early start of the negative growth rate of the population. Negative growth rate of the population you may get, but China will not have negative growth rate, and it will continue reach 2.2 billion population, which is probably even China would not like to have. So 3 is the declaration, but its achievement is very, very doubtful. And therefore, I thought first they should have the reach first landmark, that is 2.1. And therefore I did the TFR actually 2.1 by 23, that UN population projection. UN population projections 23, it will reach, because you have already in 18 you have 2.2, so it will reach maybe even before 23. And China has to increase their fertility from 1.6, 1.7 to 2.1, and that may be possible by 2035, depends on the family policy and so on. And if that happens, then you can see that India's population would start declining, but decline will not be that much, and we will remain around 1.69 or 1.7 billion by 21. Whereas the China will decline, but their population will be 1.28 billion. This is the population they wanted when they declare one-child policy. So the first, I think, for China, the first landmark is to reach 2.1, then think about three-child policy and so on. Benefit of that is, immediate reduce the aging burden on the population or on the country. You can see that, if you reach 3, what happens that percentage of population above age 65 will decline rapidly, because you will have more and more births and more younger population, and therefore that burden will not with that much, it reduces much lower, maybe below 10%. That's very good, but I think that's not possible. India, of course, continues to A, and it will be 28%, because there is no benefit in it. But this one, the projection which I feel, and as I said in the beginning, 2-child is the best, that is the TFR is 2.1 is the best option probably. You get that. Even India, burden of aging would not be that much. We are just around 18% hovering around, and we can try to take care of this population. And in terms of for China, also it reduces to 22% burden of aging, and that probably is not, that may be a welcome change which will be taking place once we aim, our objective is to maintain 2-child policy. And therefore, most of the state or country, 2.1 is the best option. But as you have seen in European population, policy in conflict of gender equality, and it is incompatible with the job and childbearing and so on, those factors will play, and fertility will reduce below 2.1. No one, I think, the experience suggests that no one can stop. In India, we are happy that the states which should not have, they have gone below 2.1 and much below European country. And I think we need to be concerned about those states. They have a lot of other implications which can be discussed later on. So that's the final thought. I think anxiety to boost the fertility is as strong as it was to reduce fertility. Once TFR goes below 2.1, it is probably impossible to bring back to 2.1. And remember that most of these developed countries, Nordic countries, they are almost spending 1 to 4% of their GDP on family policy. 4% of their GDP is a huge money they are spending, but they have not been, I think, given the expected result so far. Late marriage, nobody can stop that. People have to decide, and they will decide when to marry and when to have a child, and therefore it becomes very difficult to boost the fertility. India, of course, all those states I have said, they are very different, but surprisingly, they are much below replacement fertility compared to even European standard. So one need to really think and see, probably more research is required why that is happening. Why West Bengal is 1.5 total fertility rate. Recently, I have seen my last point. Recently, I have seen a paper by IIPS, some people, where they have shown, I think, that large number of women, they either have gone to sterilization or don't want any more child, has increased dramatically. It is 20% in Kerala or 17-18% in West Bengal. Surprisingly, it is more than 16% even in Odisha. That's what is happening. I mean, gender, that women are going for sterilization, just have only girl child, only girl family. They are either sterilized or they don't want any more children. That revolution, I should say, is taking place. And therefore, that could explain why fertility. But why that decision is being taken need to be explained, and because it has more implications, long-term implications for the state and for the country. Thank you very much for listening. I hope I have done some justice to these discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ram. I think it was an excellent presentation where you have compared Indian scenario with the European scenario with the Chinese, and this has been, I think, the participant must have benefited a lot from this. From your presentation, we also see that TFR of 2.1 is likely to be achieved very soon. And the population fertility is high in certain localities. The fertility is like the development indicator. Say, when we say the Kerala has the highest literacy, we can't say that all parts of Kerala has highest literacy. There may be pockets where the literacy is very low, and in some areas it may be 100%. So fertility is also like that. At the macro level, we are likely to achieve 2.1, but there are many states and many communities and many castes and also the illiterate people where the literacy, this fertility is high. So I think maybe the concern is regarding those areas where fertility is high. So that is one of the thing which I want to say. I mean, when we say that this state is developed, then whole of the state is not developed. Some pockets are developed, and many of the pockets, some of the pockets may be underdeveloped. So I think it has been a very excellent presentation. I would request now the participants to ask questions directly from Professor Ram. Yeah, so Dr. Charan Singh want to ask a question or want to say something?
Dr. Fojdar, this was an amazing presentation. So clean and so informative. I'm not a student of demography, but
Thank you, sir.
we are in the exercise of forecasting India's population and India's macro indicators for the next few decades. So I found your presentation extremely good, and I'll be talking to Dr. Ratan, and we'll be looking forward to more interaction with you. My quick question, Dr. Fojdar, is there any relationship between fertility and urbanization, as well as between fertility and per capita income? Thank you.
Should I respond one by one or collect the questions and?
Yeah, Dr.
Yes,
Ratan, I'll leave it to you.
Okay, go ahead. I think there is no question
Yeah,
for the time being.
Hello.
Okay, I think.
Okay, Dr. DP Singh, after this you may ask, or let him reply to Dr. Charan.
Yes, I think the remarks by Dr. Ratanchan and of course the points which has been raised by Dr. Charan Singh. They are important. I think there is an association between TFR and urbanization or per capita income. It's a very strong association. All those in urban area, even if they are relatively poor than rural area people, their fertility is lower than the rural area. And similar thing with the per capita income. But we are more concerned about the mechanism of this relationship. Is it urbanization per se, per capita income per se, or these two process of income and urbanization, they lead to better access to education, cost of living for the parents, housing problem in the urban area, or incompatibility, which I have been saying, incompatibility between job and childbearing. That's the mechanism how they relate to, the total fertility rate. They contribute. But yes, urbanization and per capita income, they provide you that access or conducive environment, because you want, remember, all European countries have more concern about intensive parenting. That means lot of time, even if you have one child, the parenting is very difficult. Like rural area in India, I don't know if the parents or mother is only one who is parenting or rearing the child. There are many people in the household who takes. Probably mother may be less burdened about that. But with the change in the scenario in urban area, I think there is an intensive opportunity cost for the mother or even the father, more so mother, of course. Opportunity cost is too high, and therefore that TFR is low. So that's the mechanism I'm trying to say. But yes, urbanization and of course income would really affect the fertility rate.
Okay, Dr. Singh, DP Singh.
Yeah, good evening. My question relates to something like fertility. I know Professor Ram from last 40 years. My question is, Professor Ram, I have been working based on NFHS data of 1 to 4, and especially using the caste data. I divided the caste group like Brahmin, upper caste, Rajput, like that, Yadava, Kurmi. What I find, every community has shown at least say 1 point decline in the TFR. But there are some castes which are still very high. Or some of the castes like Mosar, if you will be aware, they show their reversal of the fertility rate, TFR. That is going something like from 3.4 to 4.8. So in this 25 year of data which we have got from NFHS, somewhere I find that when the fertility has already declined for most of the community, how some of the community is still, is it because maybe sample size was less? No, it is quite good enough, means 1,000 household and like that. So how I can explain that? And it also shows with the mortality like under 5, there is also very close relation with the TFR and mortality. Yeah. No, Professor Ram, you are not audible.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the caste-wise fertility, your concern, probably it will be important that sample size may be one concern, and estimation of fertility for those particular castes. And if you are doing all India, then sample size may not be that important. But the caste, each caste we as defined, they are probably distributed all over India, and you don't know what is the distribution. The particular caste may be coming from UP, Bihar, or MP, Rajasthan. They have their own fertility behavior. So, and then of course, I think that the more concern is the, I'm not sure if we can apply the theory of homogeneity. The society is more homogeneous, fertility is much lower because there is less threat to security in that particular pocket where this caste is located. So depends on that, I think more important. And also, of course, you need to see, and probably you might have seen, because I believe two factors are key for reduction of fertility or low fertility, which is the women education and child mortality. If the child mortality is high in any particular caste, they will have more children. So, I mean, that's the, I explained that, I mean, you should look at sample size should be ensured, first thing. And second, the education and child mortality related to that particular caste, I think. That may explain the fertility differential caste first. But one point I would like to mention that one of my students has done PhD thesis on poor and non-poor fertility. Fertility of poor and non-poor, defined only poor and non-poor, no other categories, and some criteria. During that research, we find that NFHS 2 data is the outlier. You know, all of a sudden, you will find that the for poor, fertility goes down in NFHS 2, but in NFHS 3, it goes up all of a sudden. There is no trend of decline. Or even if you take by education, same trend, illiterate or primary and below will show you that kind of trend. No smooth trend that 1 to 2 decline, then 3 decline. In fact, by wealth quantile, poor and non-poor, it declines and then it increases in NFHS 3. So there is some concern about displacement of the events. That's more technical, I think. Can discuss later on. Thank you.
So we can take more questions if anybody has.
Sir, may I ask a question?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Sir, I am here student of IFPS. I will sir, one in West Bengal, and we have seen that approximate double in Bihar. But all the policies all are related to national level. But we all know that the replacement level of fertility is the most suitable situation for any country. But we are but seeing that it is very less TFR in West Bengal, so we can say that in future West Bengal population is going to be shut down. So is there any program or policy these types of situations for this subnational level implement or to reach the replacement level where the low TFR is gone? So is there any policy or programs is available in India for subnational level to reach the replacement level? Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was some disturbance, so I could not hear very clearly, but I understand that you are more concerned about the low fertility of West Bengal and policy. Yes, I think that's what I have been saying through my presentation, that we need to be concerned. How to approach this problem at a state level? You know, there was time period in 90s and so on, where every state, with the help of international organization known as Future Group, started preparing population policy. Every state, you know, you have UP, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, even I think Uttarakhand, some money was coming through Future Group and they were preparing population policy. You can see all those population policy prepared But I'm not sure how those population policies were implemented. Why I'm saying that? Because immediately after that, very regressive policy, I say regressive, I'm sorry for that. Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, all these states started bringing the policy where punish the people for having more than 2 children. No job, no contest in panchayat elections, and so on. Those things you probably know better than I know. And those policies did not help anybody. It didn't help. Government logic was all this panchayat sarpanch fellow play role model. I'm sorry. I think panchayat fellow plays role model. If they have 2 children, whole village will have 2 children. That was a very wrong notion, I think. Policy makers, I mean, they were justifying only. They know what they are doing, of course, better. So what I'm trying to say that yes, we need to be concerned how you approach. I feel that Nordic countries policy package, if we are really interested, it's very sensitive. I cannot, or nobody can say women, men or women, you increase your fertility, have one more child. No, that's against the human rights, more than the reproductive rights of the men and women. You need to create a conducive environment where men and women actually think that yes, having one more child is not bad idea. That's the policy approach. You can't go with the policy and stick, say you must have one child. Now we are short of the, these many below replacement, you should have one child. No, that will not work. We need to create a conducive environment through your policy package so that women and men think, yes, I think it is good to have one more child. That is what Nordic countries are doing. They don't have goal that I want to increase TFR to this. No, that will not work. That will not work. As I said, things are changing. Men and women have their own democracy. They define their own decision-making process. They own their own body and their activity. Government has nothing to do when to marry, when to have a child, when not to have a child, and so on. You have nothing to do with that. It's a free country, democratic, and we are not just going to fight with a stick with them. You have to create that policy conducive environment so that people feel. That's my logic of talking. I have read a lot on the Nordic population package, family policy package, and I think they are the best way to go. And we all know the Nordic countries are the happiest people in the world. Thank you.
Yeah, one question from me. I'm Dr. Ashok Vishandas, Dr. Faujdar Ram.
Yes, sir.
Are you able to, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, I must congratulate you for making such a comprehensive exposition. This was very, very insightful, and I appreciate. My question is semi-demographic in the sense that China followed this one-child family, which essentially means no chacha, no cousin, no mama, no nothing of that sort. So they have become ruthless and emotionless. That's their national policy of being unreasonable with many other countries, be it India, Japan, Thailand, Bangkok, and all those things. It gets reflected in their behavior both domestically and internationally, and it also gets reflected in their policy, international policy towards other country, whether they are neighbors or communist, non-communist. So do you think this one child family has taken its own toll in terms of you are being very, very if I can use that word, rude to other countries, and to the margin of being unreasonable and irrational, and that they have become expansionist because they want to expand their territory. We have seen Galwan Valley and other things. So this geopolitics also emanates from their one child norm. So it has taken own toll. So what's your take on this?
Thank you. I think I have no idea about the international policy and one child policy, but I would agree with you to say that yes, one child policy was a ruthless policy and it has its own implications. Like in India, due to maybe some other reasons, but girls are being killed before they are born. You know, there is all sex selective abortions happening. China is no exceptions. Just because of one child policy, there has been a huge, sex selective abortion in the country. They are actually, the sex ratio at birth is still very imbalanced. So that way, I think one should see. But at the same time, the policy was very gender insensitive, in a sense, saying that, for urban area, only one child. That was the conditions, that urban people should have only one child. It has only the rural area or other reason, they have one child. But they say if you have a girl child, then you should have another one. Another one actually, maybe that becomes a boy also. So they were not very gender sensitive also at the same time. But remember one thing, I'm not very sure. Yes, it is a declared one child policy, but implementation was actually flexible in a sense. There are geographical regions within China where it was not implemented. They are free to have 2 children, 3 children, and so, because density was very low, I think, and they are very special population and so on. So more concentrated this policy implementation in around and big city, mega cities of China, and around that, of course, overall researchers say around 50 to 60% of the population only was affected by one child policy. Rest 40% actually they were free to have 2 children, 3 children, and so no restriction on that. But there is no data, in fact, available. What is available is the estimated TFR depending on a lot of things and census populations and so on. And that is why nowhere you see even China has below 1.5 total fertility rate. But yes, they are declared one child policy and therefore they are being blamed. But European country, Nordic, some of the Nordic, Finland, 1.2 TFR. South Korea has no declaration, but they are below TFR, below one child in fact. So there is a voluntary and involuntary, one can say, that China has actually forced one child policy. Many other countries, due to their socio-economic background, they were voluntarily going for one child policy or below 2, and therefore people are happy there. Probably in China, people were not happy initially. And now if you read after 3 child declaration, whatever press note or newspaper reporting came, many researchers say it is impossible to improve the problem China has created for themselves with one child policy. Now reversal is not possible. But what they are doing internationally, what they are doing at Indian border, I'm not sure. I cannot relate that with the one child policy as such.
Dr. Fauzdar, General Sudhakar, if I am allowed, I have a comment. I am from the Army, retired general, on what has just been preceded in the discussion. Plus, if you allow me, I have a small question. Firstly, heartiest congratulations for an outstanding and extraordinary talk, sir. And it's a very delightful experience to go through the journey of this short talk. I'll come straight to the comment. The preceding speaker, one who asked the question, with regard to the implications towards the military domain, Well, you have very well covered, sir, that where India is scored a brownie over China, I would say China is a very bad example in the global order as far as the TFR is concerned. Yeah, there are two issues which are standing out as per my understanding. One issue is coercion, population control, growth of population by coercion, and the democratic method of exercising options in case of India. Where it is impacting today, I'll just share the two highlights because I have been dealing with the subject in the army. One of the highlights is all of us who are participating in this particular webinar may or may not be surprised that China today, with this one-child policy, does not have adequate male member to join the armed forces.
Absolutely. It's so very nice.
Do you know, sir?
Yeah.
I would like to share with this forum that they also have a cultural distinction practice. That practice is every child is duty bound to look after the aging parents. Hence, it actually it predominates the societal necessity rather than providing a child for the armed forces. He is duty bound to look after his aging parents. These are two issues. And the third point today is, sir, I wish, time permitting, you would have brought out or highlighted the gender inequality. Today, there is I don't know what is the actual ratio of the females in China. Today, the male members of China, by virtue of BRI, they are being encouraged to establish camps in different foreign. As in today, they have got their footprints in 122 countries in the world on the name of BRI. Okay, whether you call it debt trap or other, but there is a hidden agenda behind all this. The male Chinese are being encouraged to marry. Case in point is Pakistan. They have been encouraged to marry the Muslim women. This is the kind of criticality which is emerging in China. They don't have enough number of females in China today. So
Yeah.
to the point, sir. Sir, I'll bring your focus to, sorry, it may not be related to the fertility issue, but yes, I look at it from that perspective. The Indian economy is a $2.7 trillion as in today, sir. We are talking in terms of the preceding speaker, the previous speaker in the same webinar, previous to previous, as also Dr. Virmani, we spoke about dancing towards $5 trillion economy. Also, we are looking at a timeline of say 2030 of 10 trillion or 15 trillion economy, sir. With the economy expanding and the fertility rate coming down to 2.1 that you have suggested, will it impact the dividend, demographic dividend which India enjoys today till 2053, sir? The youth bulge. My pointed question is to the youth bulge which we have today.
Yeah.
55 to 60% of the Indian youth bulge, which is a huge workforce. No other country in the world has got such a huge workforce.
Yes, sir. I think, thank you very much. I agree with you, some of the points which you have, that the first point, of course, the China has no youth, enough youth, I think, those who can join army. That has been there. I mean, that question and issue has been raised. Maybe I could have shown you the age distribution, age pyramids, how it looks like. But yeah, that has been a concern. And that has been the concern even in India. I'm saying that I'm concerned with that. That the 8 states I have shown you, Punjab is one in that. Most of these states below age 30, they have all negative growth rate. Below age 30 now population is not growing, even in India. So that is why I'm saying we need to be concerned that the youth population are 15 to 35 or so, they all have negative growth rate. Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, this Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal, everywhere. So that's where we need to be concerned. Not only that, all India has a bulk. This all India has a bulk in the youth age group, and they are all unskilled, coming from UP, Bihar, I'm sorry to say that, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, all these states. Who are these youth now showing in all India? If you look, is state specific, most of the state which are having low fertility, their population below age 25 has a negative growth rate. And therefore, we need to be concerned. That's my point. All India, we may say, okay, we have a bulk. There is a huge youth. But that huge youth, whether that will actually come in the labor force, labor market, and they will get suitable job. Because they are not that skilled section of the population. That's my point. Second, about the fertility, I mean, you said China one-child policy, and it has huge impact on the gender inequality and what is happening in that country. But what I'm trying to focus here, that this is the right time we as an Indian should be concerned about. I'm concerned about UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, relatively high fertility. They need next 5-10 years support. And it is not that there is no demand for fertility reduction. There is a demand. Health system is not able to provide the services in these states. 8-9% of the married women in Uttar Pradesh, they want sterilization. Policy or no policy, but we are not able to provide them. That is what we call in demography unmet need. There is a huge unmet need in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, and we are not able to provide the services. So that we are concerned with that. But in larger interest of the country, we need to be concerned about these states, which we call them very successful in demography. Demographically, they have been very successful. But tomorrow, if you unfreeze the 71 population for deciding the representation of people in parliament, what will happen? Think about it. There will be huge actually political crisis in the country, because all South Indian states are going to lose the number of member of parliament, and all the name gain will be for Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and these states. So there is a crisis. So we need to be concerned. My point is, don't just look at all India. All India, we have 46% of the population in these 4 states. You reduce the fertility there. They need the strong health system to do that. No, policy will not help you to reduce. Nowhere it has reduced fertility. Provide services to the people. That's my concern. I cannot answer your other questions, but yes, there is a crisis in China as far as military is concerned, because there is very few youth who will join the. I'm not sure about China saying that you look after your aging parents. I think I'm not very sure, but India national policy on aging also says that if you don't look after your child, you will be jailed. This is the violation of human rights. You are asking the person to look after your parents. What are you doing? As a government, what is your social security system you want to actually create in the country? So, I mean, parents, they don't need just money. They need physical, social, emotional support. One child or 2 children today, they have to work somewhere thousands kilometers away. They can provide money, but what about the other things? Are we developing that system of care center for aging population? So that's fine. I think we need more debate. I'm sorry I have taken some more time to present, but a lot of things need to be discussed, and we need to be concerned about the situation in our country. Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Ram. Dr. Ram?
Yes?
This is N.S. Shastri.
Yes,
This
police.
is N.S. Shastri. I want to congratulate you for the talk. Am I audible?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
I want to congratulate you for the talk that you have given. I'm sorry I could not attend from the beginning, but the 2 minutes I have attended so far are really interesting to me. for the insight that you are showing for the problems.
Thank you, sir.
Your concern for the less youth population in the southern states is a real issue. And when we say demographic dividend, we should have. Now, what kind of demographic dividend should we have? Now, you are very correct in saying that we should not look at only the All India figure. We should look at what is happening in states and look at the cross-section behavior of that youth. Is it skilled? Is it technical? Is it qualified? Not qualified? Then how do we? So we have to encourage fertility control in northern states, only northern states, and then improve the situation of the employment situation, formal employment for the youth in the southern states. So the implications that you have shown in your insight are very interesting, and I would listen to your talks fully, and then later on send you some comments if I have. But I miss you very much in the
Thank you, sir.
For the family planning, family health survey. And
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I remember you. Thank you very much.
Okay, if there are any more questions? Okay.
Sir, I have two small questions. If you permit me, then may I proceed?
Okay, maybe the last question.
Okay, sir. Sir, Dr. Fauzdar Ram, I really congratulate you for a highly data-driven presentation. And I think that your presentation spoke more than whatever we had understood. Sir, the first very small question is that you argued that TFR should be used rather than the completed fertility rate. But there is growing concern that the completed fertility gives the better results than the TFR. This is the one question. And sir, second question is that in order to give the long-term projections, which software you have used? That's my two small questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I think the last questions I have used the spectrum, and probably I forgot to mention that all mortality indicators and migration indicators, they are same as United Nations. I have only manipulated the fertility in that model. So the mortality part is the same as United Nations projections. Only I have changed the fertility to see the impact and process. So that's the point. Other point which you are mentioning, I'm not sure about you're clear about the questions which you said. Can you repeat what did you say? The second question. Okay. Now I got it. The TFR versus completed fertility in use of that. Yes, I agree that the period fertility, or as a demographer, we all understand period fertility has some limitation. And there are researchers who have given methodology to adjust for that. But completed fertility has advantage, saying which is the actual number of children women has her lifetime. So for example, if I'm talking about 50 years old women, actual fertility, say three children she had, but her experience is last 25 years, 25 years actually her experience. So what happened 20 years back is actually accumulated in her behavior, and that child, 3 children she had because of that. Where the current fertility measurement, though it has a disadvantage, is much more provide the current situation, what is happening in 2018, what is happening in 2017, and so on. And I have seen that in India, mean age of childbearing has changed very slowly. That is the major problem. That tempo component of this total fertility rate Bongards and many researchers have said, is the problem. But if the mean age of childbearing is changing very slow, probably still TFR is far better than completed fertility. Because just for your information, if you check from 2011 census, 40 to 44 age group, in Kerala, women have 2 children, completed means actual number of children, 2 children per woman. And total fertility rate is also 1.8, 1.7 in Kerala. That time, 2011, it was 1.8. They are very close to each other. Why they are very close to each other? Because mean age of childbearing in Kerala has not changed much. And Kerala entered below replacement in 1988, 87, long back. So there is not much difference. Similar situation is in Tamil Nadu. Actual number of children completed fertility rate is 2.2. And in 2011, TFR was also 1.78. So there is a problem, and both have advantage and disadvantage. So it depends what is the purpose of your use. Either use TFR or actual completed fertility rate or cohort fertility rate, whatever you say. But I think TFR still has advantage over completed fertility rate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Ram, for the excellent presentations.
Thank
I
you.
think we will be in touch in future also for more similar webinars. And I request Dr. Charan Singh to say a few words.
So
Dr.
first
Charan.
of all, I must thank Dr. Foida to have accepted our invitation and speak to us. And we have all benefited in the last 90 odd minutes of his presentation, as well as the interaction. I must thank the participants to have been with us and ask such beautiful questions which bring in the best out of the speaker. So, Dr. Foida, thanks a lot. We are not going to spare you. Dr. Ratan will be in touch with you and we will need to interact more with you. I have a good news to share. Such an excellent talk on such an important topic obviously can't be wasted. So we'll have the talk on our website tomorrow by lunchtime, and you can use it for your class, for other policymakers, and it will be also on the Twitter tomorrow around noon. Next Friday, we have a special session on technology and India's soft power. To lead us through the discussion next Friday, we have with us Mr. Anandaram, Sanjay Anandaram, who's the co-founder of Network of India Culture Enterprises, NICE, and creating Indian soft power through the indigenous entrepreneurial skills. So I would invite you all for next Friday, and we'll send you the invite. Keep watching our website. I think it's going to be another interesting discussion on India as a soft power. With this, once again, let me thank each one of you to be with us, and we look forward to having you next week too. Enjoy your weekend and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Ratan, for chairing the
Thank
session and conducting the proceedings so well.
Thank
you very much. Thank you, Professor Ram.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.